Alright guys, welcome back. This video is going to be a little bit different because the topics are pretty heavy, and I thought if I talk about it while doing my makeup that it would maybe balance it out a little bit. But this is a video that I've been wanting to film for a while, and I just haven't found I just haven't filmed it yet, so today's the day. Before I get into it, no, I'm not trying to be a beauty influencer at all. So if you have questions about my makeup, just ask me, I'll answer. But I'm gonna be pushing a little bit my nails because I really love doing my dip nails at home with dip powder. Now that I've finally got the process really ironed out well, I love the application, and it's something that I genuinely love. So I will be sharing a 20% coupon plus an affiliate link. So, you know, if you feel so inclined, that would be a great way to support the channel. I'm a big believer that, like, if you're going to be an influencer, content creator, whatever, like, the best partnerships are the ones that you genuinely like. And I genuinely like this company, and I love doing my dip powder nails at home. So makeup stuff, just ask me, I'll answer. But I'm absolutely no professional when it comes to makeup. So it will not be a tutorial, it will just be a this is what I do and this is what I use type situation. Most of you probably know, but there's some of you that may not know if this is the first video of mine you're watching. But I was a paramedic for a little over 10 years. And then I had a motorcycle accident where I was internally decapitated, amongst many other things, 2 years ago. And I do not do that anymore, but I do talk about it sometimes. And today is one of those days where I'm going to talk about a very big event in my life, professionally and personally. You have probably heard about it. The date was April 27th, 2011. There was a EF5 tornado that, when you heard about it, you probably heard about the Tuscaloosa tornado. Well, I'm like 2.5 hours east of Tuscaloosa, but that tornado stayed on the ground a very long time. And that same tornado is the one that came through the community that I was working in and had a very big impact on my life for 2 reasons that I'm going to talk about. And let me just say before I get into this, I'm good. I can talk about it. It's fine. I'm going to be sharing some things that are deeply personal, and I just really ask that you respect that in the comments. I know there's going to be people that are not going to do that, but I'm not going back and forth with anybody on this in the comment section. This is my story, my views. So it involves how I officially lost my faith in the Christian religion. And I also believe that it was the catalyst for the ending of my first marriage. And so I will talk about those things a little bit. Basically what I'm trying to say is this is just a story. It's something I experienced. It's something that affected me deeply, and I'm not really up for like discussing it per se. I'm gonna tell you about it, and you can do with that what you will, but here we go. That day, April 27th, 2011, we all were prepared. Like, we knew it was gonna be a bad weather day. Our local weatherman, James Spann, is fantastic, and everybody here is obsessed with him. But I was at the station. I was on duty at work on the ambulance, and I was at the station watching all the news coverage all day. And I watched it go through Tuscaloosa, and it was several hours after that before it made it to my area, but I was at the station watching it on the news, and I remember looking at the TV and watching it go across the screen when it was in my coverage area. And as soon as the tornado went like off the screen, the calls started coming in, and it went through a community called Ohatchee in northern Calhoun County in Alabama.
WX4CAL in the Calhoun County Areas Racing Group. We are activated. We are under tornado warning from Calhoun County. It will affect the northwest corner of Calhoun County. However, there are other cells just to the southwest that will be affecting Shelby, Talladega, and the southern part of Calhoun County in the Oxford-Anniston area here within about an hour or so. So don't just lay down on this. Make sure you get prepared for another storm to hit.
I was working at the station in Jacksonville that day, which is, I don't know, like 15 minutes-ish. So this day was like my first act of nature type call. It was my first mass casualty call. So if you don't already know, that tornado killed, it was like over 200 people just in Alabama, but there was also loss of life in Mississippi, and I don't really remember where else, but in the little community that I was working, I think I could be wrong, I'll have to look when I go to edit, but in our community, it was like 20 something people that it killed. And so it was major. And so the way it worked that day was, and I don't know how, other areas do it. I don't have a lot of experience with mass casualty situations, but my ambulance was dispatched originally to a house. I think it said like Peak Road. And so, and I don't remember I don't know if it was entrapment or an injury. I don't even remember, because once you got there, it didn't matter, because nobody could get to the addresses that they were being dispatched to, because that community was, completely destroyed. If you were not underground, you didn't stand a chance in hell. Major brick structures, brick houses, brick churches were just gone. If it was above the ground and in the path of that tornado, it was gone. So the roads were completely blocked every way. Every way you tried to go in to get to somebody, it was completely blocked. You couldn't get through. So when we first got out there, my partner was driving and we got to an area where we needed to turn around. And so I got out of the truck to help clear it so we could turn around, and I stepped right onto a power line. Obviously it was dead or I wouldn't be here, but everything was pitch black and there was debris everywhere. You couldn't tell what was what. It was a mess. And I stepped on that power line and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that, like the biggest thing they teach you in EMS is scene safety, scene safety. If it's not safe, you don't go. If it's not safe, you don't go, whatever. But in reality, it's go or get fired. If you know, you know. So eventually everybody realized that they were not going to get where they were trying to go. So we all just got as far into the area as we could, and then we got out on foot. And what you have to understand about situations like that is it's mass chaos, right? There's no power anywhere. There's no lights except flashlights, and it was dark that night. It was nighttime. So I think even the cell phone reception was messed up, and so your only line of communication was your radio, your walkie-talkie to dispatch. And it was so bad that eventually the only way to get to people was the state had to come in with their big trucks and equipment to clear the path. I brought Bailey for comedic relief. So until the state got there, which took a few hours, we were it. And us, along with residents and people that just volunteered to help, were out on foot with chainsaws trying to cut a path to get to people. And something that has always stuck out to me is the smell. I will never forget the smell. And that's something I've never heard anybody else talk about. Because I used to be fascinated with tornadoes as a kid. I read everything that I could get my hands on. I was tornado obsessed. I think I got that from my mother because she was too. But in all of my reading and watching videos and documentaries on the Discovery Channel or whatever, nobody had ever mentioned the smell. But it was very, at least to me, it was very, I don't want to say triggering, but it was just something I'll always remember. But it smelled like a sawmill. I've never actually been to a sawmill, but I've been around my dad and Lee doing construction and stuff like that. And when they're cutting wood, it has a smell. You smell the sawdust or whatever. Well, that's what the whole area smelled like. It had a very strong smell of sawmill where all the trees were broken. So we, like I was saying, we were on foot with chainsaws in our hands, just trying to slowly make a path to get to people. And while we were doing that, and something I also learned through this ordeal is that communication can get very difficult. So the only way that we had to get any information about anything was, again, our radios, our walkie-talkies. While we were digging through all of the debris trying to get to people, the radio keyed up and we were told to take cover, that there was another, because there had been many tornadoes that day throughout the state. It was like an all-day event, and it was historic. It was a historic day for tornadoes in the country. But while we were digging through all that, somebody keyed up on the radio and said that there was another tornado on the ground and it was headed to us again, and that they were telling us to take cover. So here we are, just trying to cut our way through debris, and we're being told to take cover now. And when I tell you the panic that I had, because it's scary enough, like if you're in your house and you know a tornado is on the way, right? But when you're standing in pitch black, nothing but debris, the smell of sawdust, and you know that there's people trapped and killed that you can't get to, and then to know that another one is on the ground headed your way is a level of fear and panic that I cannot put words to. And I'll never forget my partner. I didn't like break down and start crying, but I started like, I was very scared, and I started like tearing up, and I was looking around and I looked at my partner and I was like, where do we go? There's nowhere to take cover. We were sitting ducks. Then another transmission came over the radio and said that there was a tornado on the ground headed towards East Boga, which at the time is where I lived with my ex-husband and my two very small kids. They were 5 and 6 at the time. And so there I am looking at just complete devastation, thinking a tornado is on the ground coming towards me, and also that there was a tornado on the ground headed towards where my husband and kids were. And I was obviously panicking, and my partner, who's an older, very experienced paramedic who had also worked another mass casualty tornado years prior, I looked at him and I was like, where do we go? There's nowhere to take cover. We can't do anything. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, well, Christy, the way I see it is we can lay down in this ditch right here and cry about it, or we can keep working. And so that's what we did. We kept working. And fortunately, there was no tornado on the ground headed towards us, but that's what we were told. So to us, it was happening. The fear was very real. And there was also no tornado headed towards East Boga. But what I learned happens in situations like that is people are upset and scared and panicking, and they will prematurely repeat something that they've heard or whatever, and that's how false information kind of affects ongoing work. I hope that makes sense. But so it was just complete miscommunication. Somebody should have never put that over the radio. They did not verify before so basically they scared us all to death for no reason and made what we were doing that much harder. But that moment is when I quit believing in God. I had been intellectually deconstructing for a while because I had been studying a lot, I'd been reading the Bible a lot, I had been, really on a journey of, basically I grew up in the church and was told, all the things that you're told in the church, in a Southern Baptist church, and there came a point in my life where it wasn't logically making sense, and I had questions, and in my search of trying to find answers or some relief, some peace to those questions, I had been reading the Bible, other books. I'd really been immersing myself into that journey. So by that point, intellectually, I had come to the conclusion that it didn't really make any sense, and I don't think that this is true, but emotionally, I was not ready to give it up because it's comforting, right? It's comforting to think that there's a God that's looking out for you and, somebody to pray to, a place that you go after you die. Of course, that's comforting. But in that moment, when I thought a tornado was on the ground, headed to me and headed to my kids, and I was told to take cover, looking around me was nothing but destruction. It looked like a war scene in a movie. It was terrifying. In that moment, the way that I felt, I immediately realized that I did not believe in God anymore. And before the mean comments start coming, I'm not saying that you are wrong or that there is no God. I'm not saying that, so please don't come at me. I'm just saying that in that moment for me, I quit believing. It did not make sense, and it was not something I wanted to be a part of any longer, because in my brain, I thought it just doesn't make sense that a loving God who created you and wanted a relationship with you and wanted what was best for you and whatever would allow you to feel the horror of what I felt. And I wasn't even injured. There were so many people that day that lost their lives in the most horrific way, and I could no longer rationalize that. And that was it for me. I don't really want to keep harping on why and how I felt. I'm just telling you that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me that night. So anyways, hours and hours go by, and we finally are able to get to some houses, and some places were still very heavily damaged but weren't leveled, and there were people in there that were trapped, and we couldn't get to them, but we could get close enough to like yell at them, and they would yell back that we're okay, we're just trapped. And so the priority was to get to the severely injured people first. That's any mass casualty event. You have walking wounded, which are green tags. Then you have deceased. Those are black tags. They're deceased and you move on. The goal is to help whoever you can help, and whoever is the most severely injured but still alive gets the immediate attention, and then you kind of work your way until you get back to walking wounded and the deceased people. So we saw a few houses where there were people, but they were okay. And then we got to another house, trailer, and there was a woman in the driveway, and her face had been cut open. Let's just say it appeared like some sort of flying debris with maybe a sharp edge hit her in the face and basically filleted her face open. And if you saw my other video that I will link right here about calls that shook me, this was another one, because she was in the driveway, deceased, and then it had been raining, so she was soaking wet and no longer alive. So she was getting cold and her color was changing. She was cyanotic, which means lack of oxygen. Is when people turn blue. And this was a African American lady. Come to find out, I knew who she was. I didn't know it at the time that that's who that was, but I found out later when they released the names that I knew her. She wasn't like a friend. She was someone that I would see. She was a caretaker of a patient we had that was special needs. And so she had rode with me in the ambulance before to help me take care of the patient that she was hired to care for. Anyways, she was an African American woman, and her skin, I had just never seen that skin tone before of her being a darker black woman. But after being out in the rain and the cyanosis, she just had this odd color. I don't know how else to. She just had a color that was like an ashy, grayish, bluish color, but it looks different on different skin tones. But that definitely like stuck out in my mind, especially when I found out that I knew who she was. There was another couple. She was the only one that I got to that was deceased, but there were other co-workers that had other deceased. Basically, they took a trailer, and that's where we put bodies in. There was another couple that died. This lady was in an electric wheelchair, and she couldn't get to the storm shelter, and her husband stayed with her, and they both died. Lots of other stories about those people. But anyways, hours and hours go by. We were up all night, of course, and then we ended up transporting someone. I don't even remember if it was a kid or somebody that had some kind of non-life-threatening injury we had to take to Birmingham. So anyways, that was kind of the story of what happened that night. And I told you why that was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back on religion for me. I think it's very different when, you hear a story about somebody dying in a tragic way and you think, oh, that's so sad, but you don't have to see it, right? You're not there experiencing it. So it's easy to kind of romanticize death a little bit. Your mind doesn't go to what they may have experienced. You just think, oh, that's so sad, they're in heaven now or whatever. That's very different than standing there in the middle of it, smelling it, and seeing the trauma. And it's an immersive experience that my brain could no longer rationalize with a belief in God. Again, that's just my opinion, my story. This is my experience that I'm sharing with you. I'm not asking you to explain it to me. I don't want you to. What I want from you is to just understand that this is my journey, not yours. But I know some of you are just not going to listen to that. So, as far as my marriage goes, Lee is my second husband. I was married to the father of my kids for, I think it was a little over 8 years. And we had a great relationship. We still have a great relationship. I love him and his wife and his stepdaughter, her daughter. I love them. Allie has been on vacations with us. We're all in a very good place. And so this is absolutely in no way a bashing of anybody. at all, okay? Let me make that very, very clear, okay? I love my ex-husband. I love his wife. We easily spend time together. Like, we're good. So just want to put that out there. But in the following days, it was all over the news. And I had this sense of, I couldn't understand. I think because I was so traumatized, I needed everybody else to be traumatized. And I know that makes no sense, but in my brain, after everything that I had seen, I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't out there volunteering, donating, helping. And I was just, I don't know, I was just very traumatized. And I remember trying to talk to my husband at the time about it. And he is he's a very happy-go-lucky person and a very bubbly, outgoing person. And I remember trying to talk to him about it, and I was just so upset. And I remember him saying, well, why don't you just quit watching it on the news? And he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't mean anything by that, but it wasn't helpful. And I didn't know how to communicate that. So now, all these years later, like what's going on in Gaza right now has really been weighing heavily on me, because I think about the fear that they're experiencing. I think about just everything that's going on, and it's nothing compared to what my experience was that night. But I understand how they must feel. How can the rest of the world just go about their lives while this is happening? And so that is how I felt after that tornado. I could not understand why life was just normal again for everybody when this was in our backyard. And I was just not able to really move on from that, the same person that I was. So after years and years of reflecting on things and reflecting back at that time in my life, I definitely started down a path of, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that I changed that night through that experience. It had a profound impact on me, and I looked at things very differently than I had in the past. And people ask all the time, since we're doing the 411 on 911 podcast, they ask quite often, do you have PTSD? And with my accident, do you have PTSD? You've got to have PTSD. And I would say, of all the things in my life, including the motorcycle accident, the ICU trauma, all of that, I have the most PTSD from April 27th, 2011. I can no longer watch the movie Twister. I used to love that movie. I can't. And it's so weird because anytime I see a tornado on TV, I have nightmares that night, every night. And I don't even have to think about it. I can just be scrolling on Facebook or whatever, and a picture of a tornado, and I don't even have to stop on it. I can just keep scrolling past. But as soon as my brain registers a tornado, I have nightmares every time. And again, I don't have any other, it's not like I walk around life every day thinking about it. Nothing like that. I do not dwell on it anymore. I'm past it. It made me reflect, and it made me grow as a person, and I'm cannot stress enough, I'm good, I'm okay, this is just story time, okay? But if I see a tornado, I have nightmares that's now, all these years later, that's something that still happens. So, and it's funny, every time Lee and I are flipping through the TV or something, and if it's the movie Twister, he's like, oh God, and he gets it off the screen. But I've even told him, I was like, Lee, it's fine, I can watch it, because I don't have trouble watching it. It doesn't upset me to watch the movie, but I have nightmares every time. And as far as my marriage, I think that was the catalyst to my husband and I at the time not getting what we needed from each other. And I don't think that we realized that at the time, but all these years later, when I think about it, that's the conclusion that I come to, and my behavior changed. The things that I needed changed, and it just didn't work out. But I am so incredibly grateful for the relationship that we have today, being co-parents of 2 children. I think that when their parents are divorced, I think it's so important, if you can do it. I mean, of course not everybody can do it, but I think it's so important for them to see parents being friendly, getting along, because it's about the kids. And I'm very grateful and very proud of the relationship that we all have. When I was in the hospital after my motorcycle accident, I don't remember him being there, but he and his wife brought the kids up, and there's even a picture of my ex-husband in the room with me. His mother, my ex-mother-in-law, I love her to pieces. She even stayed in the hospital with me several times, like overnight. So she's a very special woman, and I very much value the relationship that we all have. I actually really, really despise wearing lipstick, but I found this color recently and I thought I would show it to you. But this is the Revlon Color Stay Lip Liner in the color Nude. I actually got it at Publix the other day, and I got stuck, and a friend of ours happened to be walking by, and I like reached up. I was like, help me, because I was squatting because it was down low and I got stuck and couldn't get back up. But you can also trust that as soon as this video is over, it's coming off. But just for the sake of a complete face of makeup and showing you the lipstick, I'll put it on. But this is Revlon Color Stay Suede Ink in the color 8, called That Girl. And I like it because it's just enough. It's not dark. It's, I don't know, it's just a nice color. And the only time I wear lipstick pretty much these days is when I film a YouTube video. But since I found this color, I have been wearing it more because I like the color. So you will probably see me wearing that. So my makeup is done. I'm going to fix my hair real quick. But one other thing, if you have a beauty blender and then you know how bad these things stink after a while. I've been using this. I can't remember if I ordered it off of Amazon or if I got it on Ulta, but every time I do my makeup now, I've been using this brush and sponge cleaner and clean it. And I've been using this same sponge for at least a couple months, and it doesn't smell at all. Yeah, it doesn't have a smell at all. It's nice and clean, and it's still got a lot of life in it. So the people that use beauty blenders all know how bad they stink, but this has worked really well. I will link it in the description if I can find it on Amazon, but I will put the information in the description for you. But my biggest tip, makeup wise, I guess for this video, is to clean your sponge. So as far as like other calls, I have certainly had other calls throughout my career where I was scared for my life. Thankfully, it was only a few other times. One of them Lee and I already talked about, but was the call we had where this guy, oh man, I forgot to turn my straightener on. So I have certainly had other calls in my career where I was very scared and thought that my life was in danger. I can't talk while he's doing that because I don't know if you can hear me over that or not. I don't know how loud that is on this microphone. But Lee and I talked about a call we ran together where a guy shot and killed 3 teenagers and like a 2-year-old, and we got the 2-year-old that was still alive, and somebody was following. Anyways, we thought that the shooter was in the car behind the ambulance chasing us. Turns out that was not the case, but we both thought that that's who that was and that we were both about to be in a gunfight or something. But so that was very scary. And then I've had some psychiatric calls that were very scary, but for more personal reasons. Long story short, I don't want to get into it. My step grandmother was killed back in like 2011, I think, or 2010. I think it was 2011. She was killed by her son, who was a paranoid schizophrenic. He was like, I don't know, in his 40s at that time, but he had lived with her his whole life, and I don't know what happened, but he beat her to death with a baseball bat. And I can remember being around him just a handful of times. I mean, just a very, very few times I remember being around him as a kid, and I remember feeling very uneasy. My sister and I both were always very uneasy around him, and we were small kids. We didn't know anything about, psychiatric issues or anything. All we knew was that we felt weird around him, and then he ended up doing that. And so not anytime I had somebody, but there have been certain calls where the person was off their meds or whatever, and they were hallucinating or hearing things or whatever, and they would just have this look in their eye that it would basically just that gut feeling, that same feeling that I would get as a kid around him is the same feeling that I would get around some of these patients, even though they have an illness and deserve proper treatment. That to be a small woman locked in the back of an ambulance with someone like that who is unstable and having a crisis can be terrifying. And so I was always very uneasy running those calls, knowing what they, could be capable of. It just made me uneasy. But the tornado was definitely my first, my first realization of an overwhelming feeling of helplessness was that night. And I'm not trying to I know I say this a lot when I tell you all these stories, but I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm not trying to over dramatize it in any way. That is just how I felt, how I processed it, how it affected me. So this is the final look. As soon as this video is over, I will probably take the lipstick off. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I would really like to know how you like this format, the getting ready and storytelling. I also plan on doing some videos like this where I'm also doing my nails. As I said, I will be an affiliate. I will have a coupon code, but I genuinely this color is very subtle. When I put it on, I thought it was gonna be like white and glitter, but it ended up being like a very, almost a clear with glitter. But it's very subtle. But later this week, I've got some really pretty holiday colors coming, like this bright red glitter and green glitter, silver and gold glitter, and I'm gonna do some Christmas nails. I don't know if I'll film it or not. I might, we'll see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all very soon.